Driven by passion to enhance corporate sustainability, the governance platform is designed to promote a forum for professionals to connect, discuss, express different views, and work together to address critical governance issues. The governance platform invites governance professionals and enthusiasts to submit original and innovative research papers on the latest developments in corporate governance to the email address editorialboard@governanceplatform.org. For more information, please visit the website on www.thegovernanceplatform.org.
It all started with an exchange of value: barter, cowrie, nickel, leather, paper, gold, cards, more cards, less paper, more digital. This is how far I have come. This is how I've been made. The question is, how far are you willing to go with me? To grow with me, show me, and know me. This is an official invitation to enter into an era of a recurring creation of wealth. Not a one-off gain, but many gains leading to infinity, transcending from one person to generations born and unborn, giving you that one desire: wealth. How, you might ask? Remember when you made your first 1,000, and then 10,000, and then hundreds of thousands, and then millions? It started with the smallest version of me. A time when no matter how little I showed up, and we made every move a victory, an asset yielding assets. I have evolved. I'm not looking to be kept in a bank. I want us to build together. We've done it before, and we can do it again. This time as friends. Partners? What do you say? With me.
Under the leadership of the President. Once again, good morning. I warmly welcome you to the 2003 Annual Corporate Governance Conference in Nigeria, powered by the Society for Corporate Governance of Nigeria. So you are warmly welcome. To start this morning, I think we need to establish some protocols. I would like to start by recognizing the presence of Mr. President. That's Mr. Muhammad K. Ahmad, OON. That's the President of the Society for Corporate Governance of Nigeria. You're welcome, Mr. President. Let's also welcome our guest speaker for today's event, in the person of Ambassador Shuab Adamu Ahmed. That's the Executive Secretary, CEO of the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. You're welcome, sir. Still standing on that protocol, I would also like to recognize the President of the Chartered Institute of Directors, in the person of Alhaji Tijani Borodo, FCIOD. You're welcome, sir. Distinguished fellows of the Society for Corporate Governance, you're welcome. Associate members and corporate bodies represented, ladies and gentlemen, and the press men and women in our midst. You are all welcome to this august occasion. As we all know, the theme of the event is ESG, and corporate governance, aligning strategies for sustainable success. It's not a news anymore that we now have a body under the International, the IFRS Foundation, a board called the International Sustainability Standards Board, who globally is responsible for doling out standards on sustainability reporting. ESG is one of the key things there. What's the meaning of the acronym ESG? It's environmental, social, and corporate governance. So I would say sit back, listen. It's going to be an exciting sessions today. It's going to be educative, it's going to be eye-opening because of the quality of speakers that have been put together to come and speak to us today. So it's a topical topic, it's a topical issue, burning issue around. And I'm also aware that we know that most listed companies now in Nigeria have also been encouraged, to start reporting their sustainabilities as part of their annual reports. I'm also in the known that the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria has also opted in as a nation to, for us to join in reporting sustainability as part of our financial reports and annual reports, generally speaking. So it's an exciting time today. So let's sit back and enjoy it. At this point, I would like to invite Mrs. Osarugwe Akpata to come and give us the welcome address. You're welcome, ma'am. Please, can someone help me? You don't want to come up.
Thank you so much. Corporate governance, aligning strategies for sustainable success. Over the years, the Society has consistently and successfully held annual corporate governance conferences with, with unwaverable resolve to obtaining our objectives of developing and promoting corporate governance, ethics, and culture in Nigeria. There's indeed no gainsaying that our revered society has evolved over a decade to become unrivaled in corporate governance, ethics, leadership development in Nigeria. This is both in its originality and creativity, thus keeping ethos with the ideals of our founders. This year's conference comes at a pivotal moment when environment, social, and governance principles have taken center stage and in our economy. As expectations around sustainability rapidly evolves, there's a dire need to understand how leading companies are incorporating ESG into their strategy and overall value creation. To address today's theme, the Society has curated a lineup of seasoned experts in this regard, amongst whom are our keynote speaker, Dr. Jackie Chimhamzi, and our guest speaker, Ambassador Shaibu Adamu Ahmed, and a panel of seasoned and highly esteemed discussants. A major highlight of today's event is also a book presentation of the Society's new publications, namely 10th edition of the Corporate Governance and Sustainability Reporting, a review of the top 30 most listed capitalized companies on the NGX, and a practical handbook titled ESG and Board Leadership, a Director's Handbook. On the final note, I extend a special welcome to the sponsors of today's event. We thank you for believing in society and investing of your time and resources in joining hands to promote best corporate governance standards. And thank you, everyone, and we look forward to a successful conference. Thank you.
The podium at this level. Sorry, there's an omission here, and I must apologize for that. I'm supposed to at least just take the national item. Mr. President, can I still do that, or we should go ahead? Okay, please let's stand for national item. 1 to go. Arise. Thank you very much. You may have your seats. Let me also quickly recognize some dignitaries in our midst that I didn't recognize earlier. The Registrar General, Corporate Affairs Commission, CAC, Alhaji Abubakar. You are welcome, sir. I also have here the Director General, Bureau of Public Service Reforms, Alhaji Dihai Arabi. You are welcome, sir. So we'll be moving on now to the opening remarks by the President of the Society for Corporate Governance of Nigeria, Mr. Mahamudu K. Ahmad Owen. Sir, please can we have your opening remarks?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Society, you are welcome to our 23rd 2023 annual conference. First, I want to begin by apologizing. We are behind schedule. We are supposed to have started at 10, but given the traffic nature, apparently, that seems to have held quite a few of our colleagues to join us. And I believe as we progress, a number of our colleagues will join us. So once again, we apologize for that delay. The guest speaker today is the Executive Secretary, Chief Executive Officer of the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, Ambassador Shoaib Adamu Ahmed. Sir, you are welcome. And he came on time, and we deeply appreciate it. Our keynote speaker, she's actually online, the Chief Executive Officer of African Leadership Institute, Dr. Jackie Chimpanzee. I believe she's online, basically. And distinguished members of the panelists, most of whom are also online. Distinguished members of the board for the Society for Corporate Governance Nigeria. Some of us are here. Okay, because it was making noise, so I was trying to avoid it. I thought I can shout enough, basically. Colleagues, members and fellows of the Society, corporate governance community who are also here, members of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor and privilege to stand before you, to welcome you to our this year's annual conference on corporate governance. As earlier pointed out by our colleague who had a welcome address, today's discussion will focus on ESG and corporate governance. In other words, how do you align our strategy for sustainable success or sustainable development? We believe this is timely. We also believe that it's important that we begin to reflect on how we align that. I have the privilege of setting the agenda, at least for today's discussion. As you are aware, ESG has transcended just beyond compliance, but also as the guiding compass for us in business towards sustainable business development. The environmental responsibility for each and every one of us in our society is no longer a choice but also an obligation, in the sense that we must find a way of integrating our respective business practices to ensure that we have a more environmentally sustainable practices and policies in our operations, and not only to protect our planet, but also to secure our long-term sustainability as a business, basically. Governance, of course, is the third pillar for ESG, and to that extent, these principles are effectively integrated in the fabric of our organization. The alignment of ESG with corporate governance is not just a matter of compliance, as earlier said, but it's also a strategic imperative. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, these considerations are instrumental to with ESG. As we embark on today's discussion, I would encourage each and every one of us to seek ways, innovative ways of harmonizing our ESG principles with our governance strategies. We should go beyond the short-term focus on gains, but also to focus on building resilient, responsible, and sustainable organizations. Our shared commitment to this alignment should not be compromised. Gentlemen, we must take the lead to ensure we have that. In conclusion, I would like to state that as a society, we will continue to support these initiatives, not just as members of the society, but also the society as an institution will provide the necessary environment and, of course, practices to ensure that we aligned our thoughts with ESG. Before concluding, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, permit me to sincerely express our deepest appreciation to our sponsors who have continuously supported us. Stanbic IBTC, Zenith Bank, Securities and Exchange Commission, Transcorp Hotels, Kenner Partners, JNCI, Polaris Bank, the Bank of Industry, Eco Distribution Company, and Z Crest Group, and indeed the chief executive of that institution is physically here, and we deeply appreciate your presence, sir. We're also grateful to Financial Reporting Council and other regulatory agencies for their continuous support and cooperation. On that note, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we deeply appreciate the opportunity, particularly for those of you who are physically here, and I believe a number of us are actually online, to be part of this process. And once again, we thank you very much, and God bless. I need to go this way.
Please, can we appreciate Mr. President more? Thank you very much, sir, for that warm opening remark. We'll be moving on to the next thing on the agenda, and you will hear from Mr. President's opening remark that we've got experts in the house to come and discuss the topic today. We have our guest speaker in, but before I invite him, I would like to read his abridged profile. we had to shorten it so that we don't use the whole day to read his profile. Can you be upstanding, sir? Ambassador Shuaib Adamu Ahmed. As I read your profile, Ambassador Shuaibu Adamu Ahmed is a respected Nigerian diplomat and public servant, currently leading the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, FRC, as its Executive Secretary and Chief Executive Officer, a Fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, and a Fellow of the Association of Certified Chartered Accountants Association, ACCA. He is dedicated to promoting economic transparency, regulatory excellence, and corporate governance. With a background in the Nigerian Foreign Service, he has effectively represented Nigeria transparency and accountability in the Nigerian pursuit of sustainable economic development. Alhaji Ambassador Shuaib Adamu Ahmed, the Executive Secretary and CEO of FRCN of Nigeria, you are welcome to this August program. Sir, please, can we have you? Can we encourage him more, please?
I'm President, Society for Corporate Governance, Nigeria, Malam MK Ahmad, OON. Board members of Society for Corporate Governance, Nigeria, here present. The keynote speaker, Dr. Jaiki Chamanzi, the Registrar General Corporate Affairs Commission, the DG Bureau for Public Service Reform, esteemed discussants, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. This being the first time I'm joining this esteemed gathering, allow me to take this opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to convey my appreciation to this great society for inviting me to participate and deliver an address at this 2023 Annual Corporate Governance Conference. Since its launching, the Annual Corporate Governance Summit or Conference of the Society for Corporate Governance Nigeria has become an engaging platform for consensus building and planning for action among representatives of various stakeholders on some of the topical and evolving issues in corporate governance. I wish to commend the Society for taking this initiative and for sustaining it over the years. I'm pleased to participate in this 2023 edition of the annual conference. It's also a pleasure for me to join this extreme audience this morning. Before I proceed further, let me take a moment to extend my heartfelt appreciation and that of the Financial Reporting Council to the President of this Society, Malam MK Ahmad, for his tireless efforts in entrenching good corporate governance practices in both the private and public sectors of the Nigerian economy. Malam MK, as is fondly called by many, has not only been a dedicated advocate of good corporate governance, but also a true beacon of ethical conduct and principled leadership. His vision and tireless efforts in driving forward the mission of the society undoubtedly contributes to raising the bar of governance standards in Nigeria. His steadfast commitment to transparency and ethical values has not only earned the respect of the society's members, but also serves as an inspiration to leaders across the nation. I applaud Malam M.K. Ahmad for his outstanding contributions and salute him as a true epitome of integrity in Nigeria. The theme of this conference, ESG and corporate governance, aligning strategies for sustainable success, couldn't be more pertinent to the challenges and opportunities we faced in the post-COVID-19 era. As we gather here today, the world has undergone a profound transformation over the past few years. The COVID-19 pandemic has been an unprecedented global event that has tested our resilience as individuals and organizations. It has underscored the vital importance of environmental, social, and governance principles in today's business landscape. ESG is no longer a mere buzzword. It has become an imperative for investors, individuals, and organizations alike to navigate the complexities of our times effectively. My remarks today will delve into why I believe ESG matters more than ever in this post-pandemic world. I will also look at the recent developments in ESG or sustainability reporting both internationally and locally here in Nigeria. I will finally touch upon some critical emerging issues in corporate governance in Nigeria. So let me start with why ESG matters more than ever in this post-pandemic world. The first, of course, is environmental responsibility. The pandemic reminded us of the consequences of environmental degradation. We witnessed how nature reclaimed spaces when human activity came to a halt. It serves as a stark reminder that we are intrinsically linked to the environment. Businesses must now embrace sustainable practices to minimize their ecological footprint, reduce emissions, and conserve resources. This is not merely a moral obligation, it is a strategic imperative in the face of climate change. The adoption of ISSB standards on sustainability will provide businesses with a common framework to measure, manage, and report on their environmental impacts. The second point is social resilience. The pandemic exposed vulnerabilities in our social systems. It laid bare disparities in access to healthcare, education, and economic opportunities. Businesses have a crucial role to play in addressing these issues. Ensuring fair labor practices, fostering diversity and inclusion, and contributing to social well-being are no longer optional, but fundamental to building resilient businesses and societies. The third aspect is good governance. Strong governance has always been the bedrock of sustainable business. Effective governance ensures accountability, transparency, and ethical behavior. In the wake of the pandemic, we have seen how poor governance can lead to corporate scandals and reputational damage. To earn and maintain the trust of their stakeholders. Let me now look at aligning ESG and corporate governance strategies for sustainable success. Environmental, social, and governance and corporate governance are two critical aspects of modern business strategy that are increasingly intertwined. Aligning ESG and corporate governance strategies is an essential for achieving sustainable success in today's business. This alignment involves integrating ESG considerations into overall business strategies, thereby enhancing transparency and accountability, and actively engaging with stakeholders to build trust and create long-term value. The benefits accruing to organizations aligned to ESG and corporate governance cannot be overemphasized. It results in shared goals where they both aim for long-term sustainability and success of a company and promote responsible business practices and risk management. The alignment also assists in risk mitigation by helping organizations identify and manage risks related to environmental, social, and governance issues to prevent reputational damage and financial losses. Aligning ESG and corporate governance also ensures that a company considers the interests of all stakeholders, including shareholders, employees, customers, and the wider community, and leads to a long-term value creation which can attract capital and enhance shareholder value. The relevance of aligning ESG and corporate governance is even more relevant today, as many countries are introducing regulations that require companies to disclose ESG-related information. The alignment ensures compliance with these evolving legal requirements. Companies with strong ESG and governance practices have also been shown to have a positive reputation, which enhances their brand value, resulting in increased customer loyalty, enhanced market competitiveness, and easy investment capital attraction. Now, we must note that there is huge wealth under management that are targeted at ESG compliant companies. At the last look, it was crossing over $33 trillion. Aligning ESG and corporate governance is therefore a strategic imperative for organizations seeking sustainable success in today's business landscape. The alignment enables companies to enhance their resilience, reputation, and long-term value, while also contributing positively to society and the environment. Let me quickly look at developments on ESG or sustainability reporting over the last 2 years. Kindly permit me at this juncture to delve into the recent international developments on ESG or sustainability reporting with a focus on the journey to international standardization of ESG disclosures. At the international stage, the last decade witnessed increased global interest and focus on sustainability reporting through numerous ESG-related initiatives, with several reporting frameworks emerging across jurisdictions. These include, amongst others, the Global Reporting Initiative GIRS Standards, which is quite popular, the International Integrated Reporting IRR Framework, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, TCFD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, CSRD, and many, many, many more, emphasizing one aspect or the other of ESG. The question then was, which global reporting framework should organizations apply, and which body was best suited to achieve the desired global international standardization on ESG reporting? The journey to international standardization started September 30th, 2020, and after achieving relevant milestones, on 3rd November 2021, at the Climate Change Conference, COP26, the trustees of the IFRS Foundation announced the creation of the International Sustainability Standards Board, ISSB, within the IFRS Foundation to deliver a comprehensive global baseline of sustainability-related disclosure standards that provide investors and other capital market participants with information about companies' sustainability-related risks and opportunities to help them make informed decisions. The ISSB has made significant progress after COP26 towards delivering the global baseline. It is now fully operational with a diverse 14-member board supported by a strong technical staff team. And I'm happy to say one of the 14-member board is a Nigerian, Dr. Ngozi Ndidi. The board has published and issued its first two standards, which is IFRS S1 on general sustainability-related disclosures and IFRS S2 on climate-related disclosures. The standards have received encouraging support from the G7, the G20, the Financial Stability Board, and relevant African countries' finance ministers. The International Organization of Securities Commission, IOSCO, has also endorsed the ISSB standards. Let me take a brief moment to look at the provisions of the first two standards of the ISSB. The IFRS S1, the General Requirement Standard, requires an entity to disclose information about its significant sustainability-related risks and opportunities, and outlines the general requirements for disclosing sustainability-related financial information. The standard emphasizes the need for consistency and connections between financial statements and sustainability disclosures, and requires financial statements and sustainability disclosures to be published at the same time without specifying a location for disclosure. So both financial and sustainability disclosure must be disclosed at the same time in the same report. It also allows additional information to be provided to facilitate application in different jurisdictions. The IFRS S2, which is climate-related disclosure standard, requires an entity to disclose information about its exposure to significant climate-related risk and opportunities. The standard requires information about physical and transition risk and climate-related opportunities. The standard also requires entities to conduct an assessment of the resilience of its business strategy in multiple scenarios and to disclose greenhouse gas emissions in accordance with the Greenhouse Gas Protocol Corporate Standard. For the future, the International Sustainability Standards Board is focusing on biodiversity, ecosystems and ecosystem services, human capital with an initial focus on diversity, equity and inclusion, human rights with an initial focus on labor and communities' rights in the value chain, and lastly, development of an integrated reporting framework. Now, one of the reasons why the ISC is focusing on some of this is because we in the African continent complained that our main issue is more of social related than the climate related part of it. And gladly they've taken that note and they are now trying to focus on human capital, human rights, labor and community rights. Let me now take a moment to look at Nigeria's position in respect to developments with regards to ESG or sustainability reporting. Having considered these international developments, it's also important to recognize that a lot of local initiatives have also been put in place to support ESG disclosures locally here in Nigeria. The Financial Reporting Council's Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance, NCCG 2018, Principle 26, requires entities to pay adequate attention to sustainability issues as a means to ensuring successful long-term business performance. In addition, the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria has made very laudable progress in ensuring that ESG reporting is entrenched and mainstreamed in this country. First, in July 2022, the FRC led the Nigerian jurisdiction to comment on the exposure draft of the first two standards of the ISSB, that is draft IFRS S1 and S2. In September 2022, the FRC further led the voice of the Nigerian jurisdiction to comment on IPSA's consultation paper on advancing public sector sustainability reporting. So the International Public Sector Accounting Standard is also now trying to look at sustainability reporting, focusing on the public sector. This was followed by a push by various professional groups to urge the Financial Reporting Council to take a front seat in driving ESG disclosures in Nigeria. One of such is the communique at the last year's ICANN Annual Accountants Conference, which urged the FRC to lead in sustainability reporting in Nigeria. The FRC got the nod of the federal government to commit Nigeria to early adopt the IFRS S1 and S2, and this led to the historic announcement of Nigeria in November 2022 at the Climate Change Conference COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, as the first country globally to declare its intention to early adopt the IFRS S1 and S2. The FRC did not stop there. The IFRS S1 and S2 were launched globally on June 26, 2023, that is June this year, simultaneously across major global financial capitals around the world, ranging from London to New York, Frankfurt, and so on. Lagos, Nigeria is the only city in Africa that hosted this global and momentous event. The launch, which held at the NGX, attracted participants from the ISSB and other African countries such as Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Ghana. To support capacity building and knowledge of the new standards, the FRC collaborated with the ISSB and the NGX between June 6 and 8, 2023 to organize a 3-day workshop on IFRS S1 and S2. The workshop, which included industry-specific sessions to explore how the SASB standards apply across various sectors, also explored the basic concepts underpinning the SASB standards, highlighting how these were developed to facilitate cost-effective industry-based disclosures by preparers that yields decision-useful information for investors. The workshop also highlighted how companies and investors are using the SASB standards around the world while pointing companies to practical tools to get started. The 3-day workshop had 1,250 participants in attendance. To ensure a seamless adoption of the IFRS Sustainability Disclosure Standards in Nigeria, the Financial Reporting Council established the Adoption Readiness Working Group, ARWG, which brings together professionals from diverse backgrounds, including company directors, chief sustainability officers, chief finance officers, auditors, sustainability reporting professionals, representatives of financial institutions, regulatory bodies, investors, and academia. The role of the Adoption Readiness Working Group is to assist the Financial Reporting Council in developing a roadmap for seamless adoption of the ISSB standards, among other initiatives. These standards are supposed to become effective 1st January 2024, that's next year. The Adoption Working Group has met severally and recently concluded its retreat and is at the final stage of issuing a roadmap for the country. A significant feature of the roadmap is the provision of early adopters of the IFRS S1 and S2. These are a set of reporting entities who have been publishing sustainability reports previously and have indicated their intention and readiness to adopt the standards before the effective date of January 1st, 2024. So there are a few entities, most of them listed, that said they will attempt against their 2023 financial statement to see whether they can comply with the two standards ahead of the January 1st, 2024 commencement or takeoff. To facilitate this initiative, the FRC has held a stakeholder engagement with the early adopters and is poised to support the identified entities in this journey. The FRC is also closely working with the ISSB and other development partners to implement a capacity building initiatives with the aim of broadening knowledge of the new standards in Nigeria. Let me take the last moment to look at some emerging issues in corporate governance in Nigeria. It's a known fact, and I'm happy to say that the FRC is happy with the implementation of the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance 2018. We've seen with the implementation of that code a more diversified and inclusive board. We've seen a more effective internal audit function. We've seen better oversight function by the board over management, and so many other advantages arising from there. We are proud of the implementation of the NCSG 2018. But 2 weeks ago, I was at the investiture of the president of the Institute of Directors, Malam Tijani, who is here, and an elder statesman who was the guest speaker at that investiture, Chief Olusegun Osunke, made a remark and threw a challenge that almost a decade after he attended one of these conferences for the society, where the FRC declared that before the end of that year, the code of governance for the public sector will be released. He said almost a decade that code has not seen the light of day. And he had challenged the president of the IOD. He also challenged the FRC to ensure that this is given top priority. In fact, he said that is the #1 agenda for the president of the IOD. He mentioned the importance of getting a code for the public sector, and he made some other remarks relating to that. And I want to appeal to the president of the Society for Corporate Governance, Malam MK. The president of IOD is here. Let's take on that challenge. Let us ensure that before the end of this year, at least the first draft of the code for the public sector is released. The DG of Bureau of Public Service Reform is also here, who is also a key stakeholder in that direction. Please, let's ensure that the first draft of that code is released before the end of this year. In conclusion, let me congratulate Society for Corporate Governance of Nigeria for its outstanding contributions as a leading advocate, national convener, and thought leader in the field of corporate governance. Your dedication and commitment promoting transparency, accountability, and ethical practices in the corporate world are truly commendable. By fostering a culture of good governance, you are not only shaping the future of businesses in Nigeria, but also setting a shining example for the global community. Your tireless efforts in advancing corporate governance principles and addressing emerging challenges are paving the way for sustainable and responsible business practices. Keep up the great work, Mr. President, and may your endeavors to continue to inspire positive change and progress in the corporate governance landscape. I'm confident that with your collective wisdom and commitment, we can drive positive change and create a world where ESG and corporate governance are not just words, but guiding principles for a brighter and more sustainable future. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the insightful discussions ahead of this conference. God bless you all.
Wow. I think we should also appreciate Ambassador once more. That was a great presentation. And for me, I think it's also an eye-opener to what the FRCN is doing in terms of this ESG. A lot has been said. I'm not sure you followed critically. We are the first country in the world, to support the adoption of the sustainability standards, like you mentioned, the IFRS S1 and the IFRS S2. So a lot has been happening around ESG and sustainability reporting, generally speaking. I'm sure we're still going to hear more from the erudite speakers that we have put together for this conference. Thank you very much, Ambassador. At this point, we'll be moving on to the keynote. And to do justice to this for us is Dr. Jackie Chimazi. That's the CEO of African Leadership Institute. She will be joining us virtually, but just before she joins, let me read her profile. Again, this is an abridged profile. Dr. Jackie Chimazi, as the CEO of African Leadership Institute, leads the Archbishop Tutu Leadership Fellowship Program in partnership with Oxford University, focusing on developing the next generation of African leaders. She has been recognized and 100 most influential African women in 2019. She is driven by a vision for a better Africa, with a background as a senior strategist at the Industrial Development Corporation of South Africa and a strategy lead at Deloitte Consulting. She brings extensive industry experience. Additionally, she serves on various organizations' boards and holds impressive academic qualifications, including a PhD in strategic marketing from Cardiff Business School, UK, and is a 2010 Archbishop Tutu Leadership Fellow. Can we have Dr. join us virtually? Are we able to do this?
Yes, I think so.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You have the floor, ma'am. You have the floor, ma'am.
issues, workplace safety. We're also talking about the communities within which we do business. Are we giving back to those communities, or are we just extracting from those communities? The G refers to governance issues, board composition, executive pay. Are you paying your executives too much? What is the differential between your executive pay and those at the lowest rung of the organization? Just to give a bit of context to ESG, a lot of ESG committees tend to base their work on the 10 principles of the Global Compact. So the 10 principles of the Global Compact in turn come from these 4 major organizations globally: the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Labor Organization's Declaration of Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work, the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development, and the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. So these are the documents that form the basis of ESG committees' work in terms of the principles and the philosophies that ESG tries to bring into the organization. So the first 2 principles, as you can see here, the first one speak to human rights. So how are you treating your employees? Do you have a philosophy of human rights in your organization? The principle around labor, those ones speak to how you're treating staff. Do you have child labor? Is there compulsory labor in your supply chains? The principles around environment really speak to what we already talked about: environmental issues, your carbon footprint. How are you managing that? How are you trying to lower that? And then anti-corruption speaks to issues of corruption and bribery in the workplace, and the rules and regulations that you have in place from a ESG promote better corporate governance. How does ESG bolster corporate governance? How does ESG make corporate governance more effective? That is the crux of what I'm trying to answer today in my address. So the first one, according to me, and I've noticed that there's a lot in the literature, there's so many different points of views. So what I'm putting forward here, these are my points of views. They're not necessarily supported anyway. This is how I see ESG relating to corporate governance. And I've also noticed that there are some people who just say, oh no, ESG is just a fad, it's a trend, it's a fashion. And I've also seen people who are against ESG, that it must be banned, why are we doing this? I believe ESG is important, and this is how I see it. So firstly, I think ESG is a broadening of corporate governance. Remember when we started off, we said corporate governance is about those 4 pillars: accountability, fairness, responsibility, transparency. But what ESG does, it broadens that notion of corporate governance because it introduces new elements, as we have just seen. It introduces elements like community, it introduces environment, it introduces water, waste management, it introduces corruption. So it begins to address corporate governance from a much broader viewpoint than corporate governance does alone. So for that alone, I think ESG is really important. But also, not only does it broaden corporate governance, but it does that whilst addressing the urgency of now. I think ESG is really about relevance. What are the key existential threats that we are facing, and how do we as corporates begin to address those threats in our environment? So I like ESG because it really is a dynamic concept. It's a living concept. It addresses the issues we're all facing now. To do both. It's not enough to be well run. It's not enough to be well governed. It's not enough to have the correct decision-making metrics within the organization. It's also important to address the real issues out there: water shortages, climate, flooding, environmental issues and degradation, all of those issues. So if you see the two together, corporate governance and ESG, we actually begin to have a more fuller picture and a fuller understanding of the issues that we need to be managing. Third one is that what cannot be measured does not get done. And this is where I like ESG, because ESG is a framework which forces us to measure, to have targets on the things that we have said are material. So when we look at our ESG, what are the issues that we want to be measuring within that ESG framework? So we need to set targets, and not only do we set targets, but we set the targets with our broad stakeholder community. So they're inclusive, the process is inclusive, which is also another thing, because corporate governance tend to be the purview of the board. But I think ESG broadens it so that you've got more stakeholders who are involved in that process. And those stakeholders can be your supply chain partners, can be your customers, can be the communities which you serve, can be your employees. So what we're saying is that with ESG, we're setting targets from an inclusive perspective, and then we need to make sure that we implement those targets, but also that we measure our progress in terms of implementation. And then after we measure, we also need to report on our progress to our external stakeholders. So then I find that ESG has been the gap. Sustainability that we aspire to in the future. So without these concrete ESG targets and metrics and measurement and policing and enforcement, we could very well just be talking about sustainability in an abstract term. But ESG suddenly makes this much more tangible, and it gives us an action plan to work towards sustainability. So that's the other reason why I like ESG. But also, if you think about it, as human nature, we have proved that we like to be monitored, to be policed, to enforce measures, to report, to course correct. So I think as human beings, we have shown that unless we have targets that are enforced externally by some external body, we are not very capable of doing the right thing. And that's why I like ESG. It forces organizations to act and to do the right thing. To do the right thing, whether it's concerning gender numbers, gender inclusion, gender equity, gender pay gap. So for example, when I chair my Econet Wireless board meetings, every quarter we track the numbers. Where are we in terms of gender? How many people applied for a particular position? How many women were they? How do we support them? How do we make sure that there's equity so that they can also get ahead in their careers? How many people with disabilities? How inclusive are we as an organization? So those are the kinds of discussions that now begin to happen at a board level instead of just being very sort of high level. You start to have the real operational issues and targets, and in understanding how you're moving the organization to be better and to be more sustainable. So, given that I was an academic in my previous life, I was not going to finish this talk without presenting a model, and I designed this model, and I think this really summarizes my views of corporate governance and how it links to ESG. So on the right-hand side here, we talked about corporate governance and the 4 principles: accountability, fairness, responsibility, and transparency. And the hope of all these pillars is that it leads to more sustainable outcomes in the future. On the left-hand side, we see this ESG framework. It's got very clear operational targets, it's got measurement, and it's got external reporting. So the first one, environment. So therefore, we look at our carbon footprint, how do we want to reduce our emissions? So then you begin to be very concrete and very deliberate. Our current footprint is so much, we want to reduce our carbon emissions by X number each year until 2030, when we become carbon neutral. And it means that every quarter, the executives have to be managing whether that carbon footprint is reducing. So you can see how this becomes so much more tangible and is much better able to lead us to talk about sustainability than those 4 principles, which are kind of very abstract. So environmental, then we move on to social issues like child labor in our supply chains, And this can be very challenging. So as an organization, we are also undertaking this exercise to say, let's talk to our suppliers. Let's understand their carbon footprint. Let's understand whether they have child labor in their supply chains. Let's understand their views on water usage. So what we're trying to do now as a big corporate is also to engage the suppliers within our supply chain. It's very challenging, but you can understand why it's necessary, because we can't just continue to talk about sustainability as an abstract term. We need to come on board, not just as big organizations, but also the small organizations within our supply chain. So just to summarize, ESG, what it does, it makes us more accountable. There's an accountability element which is very appealing. And as I said before, as human beings, it's not in our nature to do the right thing. We have shown time and time again that we do the right thing when we are forced to do the right thing. Risk management, it also allows you to be able to more proactively manage your risks. So if you identify your carbon emissions as the risk, ESG forces you to begin to have mitigating strategies in place to be able to reduce that risk, but also perhaps convert it into an opportunity. So what we have done as a telco company in Zimbabwe is that we noticed that with the load shedding, with the power going, we're using a lot of diesel generators for our towers, for our network. So what we are now doing is that we're rolling out solar across our entire network, across the entire country. So this is just a gradual rollout. We need to cover, I don't know, about 600 base stations, which is a lot. But we have decided that this is the biggest risk and this is our contribution to a better environment. And so we have started the rollout. So risk management with ESG just means that you identify the thing that could be a risk and you decide how you're going to manage it. But also in this day and age, we've reached a point where investors want to invest in companies that are doing the right thing, companies that are ESG compliant. So yes, you do it because it's the right thing, but also increasingly, it may not just be the right thing. It actually may be a financial necessity if you are going to continue to attract investors. So I would urge all of you in your corporates to be making sure that you really do monitor the ESG, because going forward, it's how companies will want to invest in you, depending on how you're managing your ESG. And also ESG obviously encourages long-term thinking. So we are spending this money, we're rolling out solar and large-scale batteries because it's a long-term thing. We want to be net zero by 2030, so we're working towards that. So it also means that it begins to direct your investment, you know. So this rollout is capital intensive, it's a lot of CAPEX, but we have decided that that is our priority from a long-term perspective, and that's what we want to put our money into. Stakeholder engagement, I think I already talked about this. ESG, again, is very appealing because it forces you to go out into your communities, to be able to bring together various stakeholders to agree on what is material. So it's not just us saying, oh, we think that reducing our carbon emissions is a material issue. We say that in consultation with our communities, in consultation with our suppliers, in consultation with our investors, with our shareholders. So ESG, again, is very appealing. It enhances corporate governance because it forces organizations to be very inclusive in their processes. And finally, to end this, given that I am CEO of the African Leadership Institute, I think it will be remiss to end this without talking about the role of leadership. Leadership in ESG, leadership in corporate governance. I think leadership is just the underlying issue which needs to be addressed. If you're going to do ESG or corporate governance successfully, you need the right leadership in place. And I think we now live in a world where we are being watched all the time, whether we know it or not. You know, there's the internet, there's cancel culture, there's the whole Me Too movement, you know, there's the Gen Z, the young people who are very into issues like climate and equity. how we're treating our staff, who are concerned with communities. So I think we now live in a very transparent age where we are being watched. So I would urge leadership, corporate leadership, to kind of to respond to these challenging times that we live in. It's no longer enough just to do your job properly. You also have to be a leader. You also have to be a leader by example. You have to be transparent. And like I said, don't think that you're not being watched, because somebody is watching, somebody is videoing, somebody will leak things on the internet. There's Me Too, there's, So I think we live in a time where now, more than ever, people really need to have ethics and values in place. And we also need to be compassionate to the communities that we work in, the communities that we serve, the communities that we operate in. And all of this is really to kind of create the organization that is sustainable for the long haul. It also means bringing on board women, gender issues, they remain an issue. And it just seems so ridiculous that in 2023 we're still talking about gender representation in organizations. So those are the issues that we need to start addressing, because they will stand us in good stead for the long term. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very much. Very much. Very much. This was really, really great, and helped us to really set the stage for the panel discussion that is going to follow. And with that, I think we can, sort of straight go into that panel discussion. We're going to do a quick poll online before we do start the panel discussion, just to get an idea of where board members actually see the importance, whether it's on the E, the S, or the G. And let me maybe start by introducing myself. I wasn't actually supposed to be up here. My name is Nkem Dilimuwaje-Bell, and I am a director of the society, and I will also be moderating the panel that is to follow. So I would like to just quickly give an overview before I call my panelists on the stage, what the panel is going to focus on, right? So as Dr. Chibanzi has, so eloquently said, we really need to start facing the problems that are facing us, right? And really start looking at what are the key challenges and what are the key risks and what are the opportunities that we can identify. So in this sort of, we keep saying post-COVID era, but I think COVID also had a really big part to play in accelerating ESG and really making sure that more investors as well as leadership and other stakeholders started to look at ESG very differently. I think COVID saw supply chains collapse. COVID saw suddenly, people having to work from home and companies starting to sort of really shift how they, build culture, how they manage their people, what diversity and inclusion really means when you suddenly have access to actually a global workforce. It also, shortly after COVID, there was the, Russia-Ukraine war that started, and I think with that we really saw again the global impact of, geopolitical conflict and what it can do to really destabilize organizations and how organizations really have to rethink what they're doing very, very quickly. So this panel brings together ESG consultants, seasoned board members from various industries, including oil and gas, FMCG, and financial services, And we're going to really sort of focus on discussing the growing importance of ESG principles in the contemporary business landscape, and also how they really align to ESG strategies for sustainable success. And we're really trying to look at it from an African perspective. Audio guys, can you somehow sort out this sound? And before she joined Pfizer Inc. in New York, where she was the Vice President, Strategic Planning and Business Development for 5 years, and in 2005 was transferred to Nigeria as the Regional Director of Pfizer Inc. for Anglophone East, West, and Central Africa, a position she held until 2008. She served as head West Africa for Actis LLP from 2009 to 2014. She's also a seasoned board member that sits on various global and local boards, including Johannesburg Stock Exchange listed and Nigerian Stock Exchange listed and UK Stock Exchange listed companies. So without further ado, I will join the panelists and we'll get started. All right. So I think we can get started. Mark, are you with us online? Can we confirm that, please? Okay, there's Mark. Fantastic. Hi, Mark. We're happy to have you with us here. Can you hear us? Okay. He can
Loud and clear.
Perfect.
Hear me.
Perfect. 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 Can have a seamless discussion. Right, so let's try this. Do we need to use a different mic or something? Yeah. All right. 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 Let's try this one. Try this one. Try this one. Try this one. This one. This one. This one. This one. All right. Okay, I think this is working now. Mark, can you hear us? Mark is smiling, so I'm hoping that he can hear. Okay, fantastic. Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Nkem Dilimuaje Beo, and I'm going to be your moderator today. I am a director at the Society, and I'm hoping to drive this conversation this morning. And I'm really delighted to have this distinguished panel here with me. Again, we have Mark Hoffman, who is a partner in Deloitte. And Mark, we're going to start with you. I think Dr. Chimanzi, I don't know whether you caught her keynote, but she really covered quite a lot of the different principles around ESG and the importance of ESG for organizations. I want to ask you, what is that sort of unique African perspective that we need to apply when we're thinking and talking about ESG on the continent? Mark, hold on. Hear you now. 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 highlighted that the S is really, really important for us on the continent, right? Because I think a lot of the time we look at taking a copy and paste approach without really looking at what is the uniqueness of how we need to approach ESG as Africans. And, like I mentioned in my introduction, I talked about, sort of the intersection of COVID-19 and geopolitical conflicts such as the Russia-Ukraine war having a significant impact on both global and our local economies. And I think this has really underscored the importance of ESG considerations globally, driven by factors like climate change, evolving regulations, supply chain challenges, SDG alignment, and global partnerships. And Ngozi, I want to come to you, and I want to ask you, how can Nigerian and African organizations who are just, sort of at the beginning, who are just trying to embark on this journey, how do they assess materiality and develop their ESG strategies for sustainable long-term value? And what role does the board play in really embedding ESG into the business strategy? So it's kind of like 2-3 questions in one.
So I think that both Mark and Mrs. Gymnasi actually set up the situation very well, because I think as change is accelerating in our continent, globally in the world, and we see the interconnectedness and the need for African businesses to really rise to the challenge and also begin to act, I think, at what we call sort of world-class standards. The board's role is critical in driving that, because I think Jackie said we have to be accountable, we're responsible for the transparency, and we're responsible for really driving the performance of the business. And the board's first role is leading the strategic integration of ESG principles and practices into the way we do businesses. Many times I think we look at ESG as almost a separate entity, separate thing that we have to do. And I think it is important for boards to understand that taking an ESG lens to how we develop strategy and how we look at risk, not just risk, but also opportunity. And assessing risk opportunity against what is, I love to think about the 5 sources of capital: financial capital, our social capital. When you look at ESG lenses against those areas of capital in how you begin to develop your strategy and execute your business approach, I think then we begin to develop a means of driving sustainable businesses and elevating the practice towards world-class standards. I like to think about a strategy development process for businesses, which is part of everyday business. And we have to learn to rapidly scan what's going on in our environments quickly, integrating these risks. We have to rapidly learn how to then redesign or develop our business structure, policies, processes, procedures, so that we can respond to the challenges and really begin to embed. Embedding is, to me, about performance management and measuring outcomes of the strategy and so forth. So I hope that answers your first question. Sorry? No. And so the board's role for me is really driving that process. The second question, please remind me.
Okay, so the second part of the question is, like what are the things that they need to do to really start going on that journey around materiality assessment and the strategy development? I think you've spoken a little bit to the strategy
development. So in terms of the materiality assessment, I like to think about the fact that when you have done your assessment of what's going on in your environment, your ESG issues, we really need to think about what is the long-term impact on our financials, on our people resources, on our governance of the business, the reputation that we have as a business. And we are looking at that not only in terms of risk and impact, in terms of whether we can affect change, whether they can affect change on us and risk on us, but we should also look at it as an opportunity. And whatever, in my view, you end up identifying as both high risk and high opportunity, with your ability to actually change the course or the ability for them to change course on your business, becomes a material issue for you to address. And then developing your strategy around those material issues. I don't think it's rocket science. My biggest issue oftentimes is that in risk and materiality assessment, companies focus on the traditional levers of looking at, market risk, financial risk, reputational risk. They don't actually take an ESG lens to it, and they don't actually look at the impact of those risks on what actually drives overall performance expectations of their stakeholders, and I say stakeholders and not shareholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I love that. Especially the focus on, use your ESG lens and actually make ESG, and I think Dr. Chimanzi alluded to that as well, that ESG becomes your business strategy, right? And it's not sort of like an extra thing that you add on top of it, and it's not a checkbox. I think one of the industries where, ESG is very important simply because of how that industry is evolving is the oil and gas industry that Chioma is in. And, we know that Seplat is well on the way when it comes to ESG integration. And as an oil and gas company, let's talk a little bit about the E, right? Of course, for you, it plays a very big role, especially when we look at, the energy transition. So I want to know, how are you strategically navigating the energy transition while also addressing specific ESG challenges and opportunities within your industry? And can you share some of your key strategic considerations and maybe touch a little bit on how did you go about materiality, risk, human capital, as well as stakeholder engagement and stakeholder management? So just tell us a little bit, expand on what Ngozi has, sort of laid the foundation for in theory, and then tell us how you're doing that in practice.
Okay, I'm going to use this one. I think it's better. Okay, that way I can look at you. Okay, so at Seplat, I think let's start by looking at the corporate strategy. And the way we have our strategic framework set up is in two parts. The first is to deliver on energy transition, about the fact that sustainability is almost like the end, is the end state, while ESG is how we should look at our businesses. At Seplat, what we've tried to do now, and actually my title is going to change very soon, because it's not about sustainability, it's about embedding environment, social, and governance in the business with business owners. So right in my own team moving forward would be the social part of it. So I'm going to start with the social. And we look at human capital development, we look at diversity and inclusion, which is now a huge topic. And we actually have instituted policies around D&I. This year we started by setting up a policy on labor and child labor practices. So it's not even about our institution. We actually are working with our vendors and our partners, and there's that engagement and learning going on. So the policy is instituted from the board and signed off, but from an execution perspective, we're working with our vendors and our partners, including our JV partners and the regulators, to see how child labor, for instance, becomes a topical issue, and how we start to check on the partners that we work with around their child labor practices. D&I has become topical for us. We have learning sessions. These learning sessions are both internal and external as well. We look at compensation, labor relations, and things like that. For the environment, I'm going to go into the environment, which is now going to be championed by the operations and the new energy team. It's not about what the sustainability team say. It's about how in your day-to-day business, your practices are truly governed by the environmental policy which we've put in place. We have a HSE management system, and that system is something that actually sets how we operate in our various asset bases, right? So everyone is signed on to the policy. 1, 2, everyone is governed by that system as to how we look at the environmental impact of our operations, our productions, how we look at risk, how we look at GHG emissions. We have a tool, so we're also leveraging technology. There's a new tool we launched, I think, beginning of this year, called Nubia. And what that does across the entire value chain is look at scope 1 and scope 2 emissions and seeing how those emissions are tracked. There's a lot more transparency in that process now because we now add that to our reporting. So we actually were able to report it with our last year's sustainability report, and it's going out into this year's sustainability report. From a materiality perspective, exactly what you said, it's double materiality. I learned that recently. And it's an outside-in, inside-out view of risk. So you're saying that how do our operations at Seplat, what is the impact of our operations on the outside? So things like damage to nature, industrial and labor relation challenges, and then the impact of activities from the outside, for example, corruption, reputational risk, and so on. How does that also, so we look at it through that lens. So our enterprise risk register right now is looking at it through an ESG lens, right? And that is how we analyze risk, identify it, coach and train our people, including our vendors, on those and identifying those risks. It's important to also, I think we found, to create a much more open environment where when there's a breach of policy, when they identified risk, it's an opportunity to have the conversation, to raise it in a safe environment and be able to address it. So those are some of the things that we're doing.
Really, really interesting. And I love the fact that you spoke to so many of the key things, right? You talked about how ESG is not that extra thing that you add on, but it is part of your mission and vision as a company, right? And I think that that's really the embed that Ngozi, talked about earlier. And you also talked about DEI, which we're going to come back to in a little bit. But I want to go to Adedayo, right? So Adedayo, you're in the financial service industry, and I think there's a lot sort of happening in that industry as well when it comes to ESG. So I just want to know, in your organization, where are you on your ESG journey? How are you approaching that? And, what are you, sort of doing with regards to engaging your shareholders, your investors, your vendors, your employees, when it comes to ESG matters?
Right. Okay, yes. Well, thank you. As a privately held financial services firm, typically there's this expectation or this assumption that some of these issues are not priority for you. And it is a general thing that goes on. It's an obligation imposed by regulatory authorities, either with the CBN, for example, under the Sustainable Banking Practice in 2012, where you started to see banks start to do a lot more in ESG disclosures. For privately held businesses, there's this sense sometimes that we're not yet mature for these things. But like what they always say, experience is the best teacher. When you have risk issues that crystallize, they now immediately make you keenly aware of the ESG opportunities and risks that you face. Then you have no choice than to just get to the table and get to work. So for us, as a bottom-up business where we grew from the basics, bootstrapped, we didn't get to raise capital, we didn't institute a lot of these things super early enough. But then as you grow, as you start to see more of your responsibility to the ecosystem, in how you design your products, in how you service your customers, in how you allocate capital responsibly, what sectors are you allocating capital to, you start to understand how this is important. For us, I think we are in a very good place right now. At the board level, we set our expectations for our ESG responsibilities. So the ownership of that sits at the board level. And it's not a separate function like every other person has said. It is part of the board functions under the enterprise risk management function. We are keenly aware of our ARM framework, and these are instituted as part of our ARM framework. So we do a level setting at the group. What is important to us under these entire ESG conversations. I think for us, social and governance issues are the more obvious things that we have to deal with in how we allocate capital, in how we approach the agency problem between the promoters of the business and the managers, and in how we design products to be very inclusive. We do financial services, we do asset management, we do lending. What are we doing with the customers in that space? Are we designing products to be fair and responsible? Are we seeing ourselves as very strong fiduciary who must respect the rules in everything that we do? And what do we prioritize in terms of management? And all of this is really in enlightened self-interest. It is at Zcrest, for example, we say we don't do deals, we only do business. And the distinction is when you do deals, you're looking for money. Just make money and move on. If you're trying to do business, you're looking at something sustainable, something that makes you sleep easy at night, something that helps everyone. What would be the point of a bank declaring 1 trillion naira in revenues for this year, and then the CEO cannot drive out at night because they're not paying their fair share of taxes? So then the roads are not good, so there's poverty, and then they say they are eating the rich. What is the value of that? If you follow sustainable practices, then you are developing a more holistic and a more wholesome business that benefits everyone, and it also helps you long term. So that's all the issues that we have identified and we have instituted. It's general level conversations happening in the company in everything that we do. We are also principal investors, and as we speak to investee companies, these are one of our requirements even before we invest. We want to be sure that there's inclusion in what they're designing and what they're building. We want to ensure that there's governance, more importantly. And we've seen around, there's a failure of governance around younger businesses in Nigeria. And all of this is because of this assumption that this is a bigger boy conversation. Across the ecosystem, we've seen adoption from more mature businesses. Like I said, it all started from the CBN's framework in 2012. And now we have the capital markets frameworks, both from the stock exchange and from the SEC. And across other industries. And I think the Financial Reporting Council is acting as the champion for all of this as a report of financial statements. The more I see it over time, this adoption will go down from public companies even down to privately held companies, since all the regulators in every sector would be more involved in designing these frameworks and then in implementing and holding people accountable to those standards.
Thank you very much. I love what you guys are doing. I love what you guys are doing, and I'm very excited to actually see how many Nigerian companies, whether they're publicly held or privately held, are actually already on this journey. And I think it's actually really important. So at the end, you sort of spoke to the different frameworks. You talked about the CBN Sustainable Banking Principles. Earlier we also heard about the FRCN Code of Corporate Conduct. And there are many other standards that have been mentioned in the conversations. Where do you think we are with our local standards? And how do you want to see them evolve in the next couple of years?
Yes, I liked when I read the CBN's Sustainable Banking Practices Framework. I liked something that they wrote there, and it was that they understand keenly they were coming from a low base, and so growth and progress will be incremental, and every firm is not coming at the same pace. So we have to recognize that and build, and a measure of success will be on incremental growth, not on absolute transformation that is overnight. What I've seen around is that every sector regulator has come up with something. In the oil and gas space, you have the EGASPIN, environmental guidelines and principles for petroleum industry in Nigeria. You have the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, you have the SEC, you have the CBN, you have all of that. So the only way to approach this problem really is from a sector point of view. You can have general frameworks like the Financial Reporting Council, like the United Nations SDG goals, but then implementing them has to come down to each association, each group, so that as a trade group, in that sense, you can ensure that all your members are in alignment with the same goals. There's no value if one company is doing the right thing and then the remaining 20 or 25 are not doing. So I see a lot more needs to be done around implementation, but around the framework themselves, I think we've done a lot of work already, because again, we are part of the United Nations, we subscribe to the same United Nations goals, so we've seen everybody adopt the same goals with local context, right? But then more needs to be done around the implementation, and then around the messaging. This is not just for big boys, this is for every trade union. So you like to see these things even in NURTW, for example, is something I would like to see. Are they charging people? Are we also doing are we also moving to gas instead of petrol to also drive down emission from cars? But finally, also, like you said, it's inside and out. As we're trying to get people to adopt these things more, we also have to be keenly aware of their own position and situation. there's this conversion around we are chasing climate goals, but are we thinking about it in a very fair and equitable manner? African countries, for example, the only thing we have for now is people and natural resources. Norway has done a lot of exploration of oil over the years, made trillions of dollars. So now, conveniently, they have so much money, we can do SDG. And then you have DR Congo and you have Nigeria, we've not even tapped our gas resources. So is it fair to expect us to abandon all of that and start to chase solar at this point in time? And you can take that across all other sectors also. ZCREST is trying to stay alive. We're just 10 years old this year. And then you have banks that have 10 trillion naira balance sheet, and then you put us to the same standards without allowing us grow through that process. I think that's also one thing that would help in implementation. A keen awareness of the stages of different businesses on the journey, and not using the same general framework to oversee the big boy and then the underdogs.
I think that resonated with a lot of people. And I think that's also something for regulators to really think about, right? Especially when we think about it from the governance perspective, right? So like you said, a lot of young companies, we've seen a collapse of governance, but that's also because the evolution of governance takes time, and a lot of these younger companies, especially within the technology space, are actually scaling much faster than traditional companies, right? So they actually do need corporate governance embedded very, very quickly, but are struggling to do that properly. Mark, I want to come back to you. You've worked with over 200 different organizations in really helping them to implement and improve their IFRS financial reporting and integrated ESG reporting processes and systems as well. And you've basically done that, sort of to help your clients achieve their strategic objectives and their purpose. So I want to ask you, what are the emerging ESG reporting standards that are most meaningful to African companies? And what approach should African boards take with regards to framework and technology selection? And then lastly, how can they really ensure compliance while optimizing sustainability efforts over time, especially, sort of in light with what Adedayo said in terms of where we are today and, where the rest of the world is? Thank you.
And a question that, but a short synopsis. I think standards, the biggest issue that we've seen over the previous years is what's called the alphabet soup, and you've actually just mentioned in some of the earlier questions and panelists of the multitude of standards and frameworks that are out there. The good news is the last 3 years the world has worked really hard to coalesce around what will become global standards on sustainability reporting. And even better to note that Nigeria is one of the
I think some of the points that you talked about were really, really important in terms of ESG not being, again, that extra thing, but being really an integral part of the business and how you even look at business, and really that, boards need to start thinking and talking about ESG with a very, very different approach, and not just okay, we need to create a sustainability report, but what are we really tracking? What are we really looking at? How does that strategically drive our business? And Chioma, I want to come back to you. I'm really curious about, sort of what are the specific initiatives, causes, projects that your company has championed as part of your ESG integration. And can you, sort of, when you talk about this question, right, approach it from the sort of highlighting the importance of partnerships, collaborations, also disclosure and transparency, if you can touch on that, and then also the role of building trust with your stakeholders. Like how has that played a role in your ESG journey?
Okay, so I'm going to take, I think, with the environment piece, I'll start with that. So with the environment piece, somehow a bit about what Mark said, where you can't do it all on Excel, right? So there's been a significant investment in an ERP system, in an environmental management system as well. It's taken quite a bit of money and quite a bit of learning and understanding to put that in place. So that's happening. From a transparency perspective, and also just holding ourselves up to a higher standard, we've subjected ourselves to rigorous sort of overhaul from a process perspective. And we're looking at actually certifying ISO 14001 in 2024. And so what that has forced us to do is to now dig deep across our various assets and say, okay, what exactly are we doing? What are the risks that we've identified? What are our processes about? How are we in line with these goals that we've set for ourselves from an ESG perspective? So that is one. Stakeholders. So our stakeholders for us, as we know, when you're in oil and gas business or in energy business, your host community is number one. And how you engage with them, we recently had conversations with our regulator, the NUPRC, and they talked a lot around our social capital. So we operate in Edo State, Delta State, and Imo State. And we have the gas plants, we've got production operations in Imo State, and we've got production operations in Sapele, and the gas plants in Edo State. And without significant and sustained engagement with those host communities, we wouldn't be in business. So even as far as discussing with them around what kind of social development programs should we have in your community that would truly impact your community. So the S for us when it comes to that community impact program is driven by what the host communities have told us makes sense for them. So the needs assessments are not just pen to paper, some kind of research. No, you actually do have to ask the right questions and ask them what exactly is it that would truly impact their community. So we have 5 pillars that we drive our social development programs across, and this came from the communities. We've got health, education, youth empowerment, safe motherhood, and then we've got access to energy. Again, going back to our promise, which is to transform lives through energy. So the solar projects that we're doing in educational, in schools and in hospitals are driven by what it is that the communities say that they need. The other thing that has come through from our stakeholder engagement is the challenges around oil theft and militancy around our base operations. Without the cooperation and the engagement of those communities and the social capital that we've invested in them, you would have even more problems than we do presently. Yes, there are the odd issues, but for the most part, we work hand in hand and we keep engaging, right? The gas business is another way in which we are looking at building a sustainable business, in which we're looking at how collaboration and an understanding of what the federal government, in this case, we're now looking at our JV partners, the NNPC. Where is the NNPC seeing energy transition? And they say that at the heart of energy transition is gas. So our investment in the gas business, which has been significant, working with the JV partners, is because we understand the need to provide gas as the base load for electricity looking forward, but also an alternative power source or energy source for the nation, and also understanding that we need to affect energy poverty and drive energy security, because in the host communities where we find ourselves, there is a challenge clearly with cooking and all those things. So now thinking around clean cooking, I know it's a very lofty idea, right? But the conversations we're having now, especially looking at gas, is saying how can we, collaborating with United Nations, collaborating with government and our JV partners, actually provide real clean cooking alternatives for these communities and for those rural women. So those are things we're looking at embedding in our social programs going into 2024. Those are some of the things that we're trying out.
Fantastic. I love how, everything is really around stakeholder engagement and really taking the information that you're getting and embedding it into the programs, and not just saying, okay, we're just going to come up with our own initiatives and, plant some trees and then that's it, right? No, I mean, a lot of organizations approach ESG from that perspective, right? Where tree planting is, what they're doing for sustainability, but how does it relate to their actual business, right? And I think that's, something that is really, really important when we really think about that embed element. Earlier you talked about DEI, and I want to quickly, jump on that topic a little bit. And I'll come to Ngozi. So you've got a lot of extensive experience. When I read your profile, I talked about, you sit on companies, including UK FTSE 50 company, listed companies in Europe, Nigeria, and South Africa, as well as Pan-African companies. And you've encountered, I'm sure, through all of this experience, a lot of diverse and inclusive boards. And I want to understand, right, because a lot of the time when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're just talking about that gender lens, right? We're talking about, get more women into the workforce or at board level. But I want to know, how have you really observed the advantages of diversity, equity, and inclusion manifest in your board experience? And can you share some examples where diversity played a pivotal role, and what guidance could you sort of offer Nigerian and African boards in terms of how should they even go about DEI and what should they really consider?
Thank you. Clearly, as part of I call it the other 50%, I think that gender diversity on a board and in business is of great importance, aside from the fact that studies have shown that when you have gender diversity, you actually have increased performance, right? So I don't know how many people realize that of the 500 businesses, the 500 S&P businesses, the 41 that are women-led outperform the 249 that are male-led. So for me, gender diversity is not about, it's really nice to have women and so forth. That's not about, it's about performance. And it's about your business. And generally to me, DEI is about enhancing performance. It's about enhancing your ability to look at risk, opportunity, and identify innovation. The other statistics, which a lot of folks don't know, is that businesses that have significant diversity actually have 45% more innovation in terms of their ability to generate new products and services than others, right? So DEI is about good business. It is about getting the opportunity to manage risk, to see opportunities better. It's about enhancing your performance, and it's also about enhancing governance. So I think it's an imperative for most businesses to really go into DEI and take it beyond gender. As a woman, like I said, gender is important, but I feel that oftentimes DEI gets reduced to gender story, and it's not about that. So I'm privileged to sit on boards that are actually women-led. Of 3 of my boards, 4 of my major boards, 3 of them are women, have been women-led. And there is a difference in the way that they look at things. But the most important difference, I think, is in understanding collaboration, understanding the need for diversity of thought, diversity of experience, diversity of perspective, diversity of background. And that is what DEI, to me, is really about, okay? And when you get that, you suddenly have a very different way of running your businesses. So 2 live examples of the impact, positive impact of having a diverse management team. On one of my boards, Imperial Brands, of the 11 executives there are 9 different nationalities, let alone the fact that I'm on their board, I'm Nigerian, I don't smoke, and I'm asthmatic, and I don't believe in smoking. But there's a reason why they want somebody of that perspective on that board, because it's diversity of thought, and there's another perspective that they're looking for. In their management team, these 9 nationalities have actually helped them a lot, because Imperial Brands is a challenger brand. They're their smallest of the big 4 tobacco. They had many, many issues in terms of trying to change their performance trajectory. They had a situation where a vote of no confidence forced the board, the chair, basically off the board, had to put in an interim chair, who is now our chair, and she's revamped this business. You face a situation post-COVID where, for the first time in Europe, you're beginning to see inflation rates that are double-digit. To us here, it's normal. It's normal business, right? You know, and I like to believe that it would be nice if our real inflation rate was 25%. I'm not sure that it is. I think it's a lot more. But for them, when you see double-digit inflation in European countries, this is a massive issue in your supply chain, your cost of goods, your ability to price everything in your business and squeeze on margin. What allowed this company to be able to effectively deal with it is that their CFO is Swiss and has spent a lot of time working in Argentina, in Chile, and all of these places with hyperinflation. Their CEO is the same. He's German, but he spent a lot of time working in Latin America and in Asia. And so on and so forth. Their head of supply chain is Brazilian. So they are met with 10% inflation, and the management team says, oh, okay, we know how to do inflationary pricing, and they began to deal with it, forward buying in terms of tobacco leaf, everything that they needed in order to manage the pricing and in order to manage their cost of goods. They would not have been able to do that. They would spend a lot of time studying if they had not had that diversity of perspective on their board. I sat on the board of a company called Barlow World, which is a large industrials business in South Africa. Again, not an expert in mining, was not an expert in all of the issues that South Africans have to deal with, but I sat on what's called SETC, which is the Social Equity, Social Ethics and Transformation Committee, which is a necessary thing in all South African businesses, right? And we were dealing at that time with really beginning to think about BEE and how to transform this organization, and BEE is, you know, Black empowerment, and moving out of what's happened, obviously, with apartheid and changing the racial face of a number of these large businesses. So again, a Nigerian woman, we don't have BEE issues in that respect here in Nigeria. I grew up in the US, but I brought a very different perspective, particularly when there were certain ideas of what to do on BEE, which seemed to me against the focus of having performance-driven employment, right? So you're trying to address an equity and inclusion issue, and you're forgetting at times that we want a workforce that is going to drive the right type of performance. We want the right skills. We want the right balance. So someone like myself on that board, you will come with a BEE plan, and I'll look at it and say, but why would we do that? It doesn't seem to make the right financial and economic impact. Here are the reputational issues and the long-term issues that you're going to have when you're looking at more you forget the performance and skills element of equity. So in sum, I'd say DEI is important. It is necessary. You cannot ignore in talent-constrained industries, in a talent-constrained world, other gender, whether it be ethnicities, whether it be nationalities. You have to begin to look almost globally to get the talent that you need. And you need that perspective if you're actually going to operate at a much higher level of performance. So for me, DEI is not a nice to have, it is a must have if you're going to perform at the top. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, thank you. I think that again speaks to, sort of like looking at it from both the risk side and the opportunity side, right? And really using ESG to drive performance across, your business. I've been told that we are out of time, but I want to give the audience the opportunity to ask some questions. So if you have any questions, please do put them into the Q&A box in the Zoom chat, and then I'll read them out. While we, sort of anticipate questions, I just want to go back to Mark quickly, right? So, Mark, companies in Nigeria especially, right? Ngozi just talked about hyperinflation. We have crazy FX volatility. Fuel prices are through the roof. Executives and board members are, under a lot of pressure to actually reduce cost, right? And sort of de-risk and optimize your cost structures. And then we have, you and Chioma tell us that we need to make significant investments. How do we balance that, right? And if you can just maybe answer that in like a minute or two, to just tell us, like, how should we approach that, and how do we also convey that to our stakeholders in the end?
Real question, and short-term performance is absolutely at the heart of any business's financial sustainability and cannot be ignored. But it's too easy to sacrifice long-term value for short-term profits, and we've seen some fatal mistakes made by many businesses. And this is where I think the board plays a fundamental role in terms of balancing management and investors and other stakeholders against a long-term value view of strategy. So many ESG matters and opportunities will require investment today for value in 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 10 years. And not making those investments today could prove fatal for those businesses. I stay with my example of agriculture and food, not investing in water resilient plants.
We just need to, go on the journey if we don't want to, see our companies die. Currently, there are no questions in the Q&A, so maybe we'll just ask Chioma another question quickly. So Chioma, in like one minute, right? So you said your title is changing, but currently you also oversee external affairs as well as sustainability. And I know you have a brand and communications background, and from some of your answers, I could see how you've really also built a brand around what you're doing. So I want to know, how do you transition from sort of stating your ESG intentions to actually implementing them, and then to effectively communicating? So if you can just focus on that communication part, because I think you've told us the transition from sort of the saying to the doing. So how do we tell that story effectively?
So I would say from an inside out. So if I use the Seplat example, we have what we call brand champions, right? Now, in any other organization, you would look at it as someone who speaks to the brand, you know, the nice fuzzy stuff. But when you think about the fact that the brand champion, in the way we see it, and the way I think most organizations should see it, is that the conversations that they're championing internally and the awareness sessions and the engagement speak to the corporate strategy. And if ESG is at the heart of your corporate strategy, so those are the kind of conversations that have been had internally. So the brand champion is the sustainability and ESG champion at the same time, because they are speaking to the values. And if at the heart of your values is how to build a sustainable business, how to embed within that business the goals that are environment, social, and governance, then those are the conversations around the brand. The other way is the KPIs. So I think Dr. Chimanzi said something around what is not measured is not done. So if I look at my KPI, let me look at the corporate scorecard. The corporate KPI has, at the board level and senior management level, 30% of our KPIs are ESG, 30% weighting, ESG first. And then every single person in the organization has to account for that ESG KPI as well. They have to be able to show involvement, engagement, the doing of it, like you said. So those things internally help to communicate. And then when you go out externally and you look at the programs you're investing in, and you look at the conversations that you're having, either with your JV partners or with the regulators and so on, those conversations, again, come right back to the ESG conversation. So we are literally hand in glove with our regulator and our JV partners. Whatever it is that is done within Seplat is also replicated in their own systems as well. So the NUPRC, for instance, has a strong sustainability team, the NNPC as well. And so those conversations and that messaging that is going out for the Seplat NNPC JV has to be hinged around sustainability and so on. So it's the same messaging both ways. So internally we speak to it, and then externally with our partners and our communities, we also, champion that.
Thank you so much. So that's how you go from from saying to doing to actually telling. Do we have questions in the room? Okay, we have a show of hands here. Can we get a microphone over there, please?
Thank you, Kim. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tijani Mohamed Borodo. Mr. President, I stand here as a member of the society, a member of the board who has resigned recently because of another assignment in the IOD, where I'm the president now. So I'm wearing several caps here. But what is most important to me is that we're talking of ESG, we're talking of good corporate governance. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, the important thing is, what are you doing in an organization with ESG? It doesn't matter which association you belong to. I thought I should put this across for us. Having said this, the keynote speaker, the ambassador, had clearly mentioned out of this ESG, it's the social that really concerns us as Africa. And I've had the discussions, particularly the lady from Seplat. You seem to be doing very well in that area. I commend you. And I think we also need to take that back to our different organizations. The social is so fundamental for us as African countries and as African businesses, because the issue of education, girl child, societal issues are so fundamental to us that unless we address them, we will not even be looking at the bigger picture of the environment, okay? And then also the issue of governance. So what I want to say is to emphasize that the social is so critical for us in our various businesses. We need to make that our own priority. Having said that, Ambassador has reminded me of the challenge thrown to us by the former president of Society of Corporate Governance, Chief Oshunkoye, with regards Code of Corporate Governance for Public Sector. He has said it here again. I've heard it about 3 or 4 times since my investiture. And I think it's something that if you talk to CEOs, ask them what's keeping you awake overnight. I think this is what has started keeping me awake overnight. So, Mr. President, MK, the ES for Financial Reporting Council and myself here, there's a challenge to us from a former president of this society. And I think we need to really take it seriously, because governance, good corporate governance in public sector is so important to us as members of the private sector. So I've taken the challenge. Mr. President, MK, you, me, and the Executive Secretary, we must address this issue so that before the end of the year, we're able to say something has been done in that regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, there's a hand there behind you.
Thank you very much. I don't even know who to direct this to directly, but my question is, how are Nigerian stakeholders collaborating with other African stakeholders in terms of the development and implementation of Afrocentric ESG frameworks and disclosure standards?
Okay, thank you. I'm going to let Ngozi take this because I know she recently co-founded a ESG consulting firm called ESG in Action Africa. And, you know, I think that Afrocentricity and collaboration is really at the heart of that company. So Ngozi, if you can, you know, elaborate on the question a little.
I think my response may be surprising, right? Because I really think that a lot of what has been done in terms of standards and developing the standards globally makes sense. So I don't feel that we as Africans need to change those frameworks. What we have to do is identify within the issues the ones that are critical to us, how we will measure those, and developing our journey towards addressing those issues. It's not about the different framework or the definition of measurement. In order to get a seat at the table, to change the importance of, oh, should we focus so much on climate versus this versus that, we actually have to start doing. We have to start from somewhere to be clear about, from a business point of view, and each business's key priorities, other people have said it, may be slightly different, right? Particularly depending on the sector that you're in. So identify what they are, define our starting point, begin to measure and begin to show success and performance against that. The one thing that we cannot do is not engage because we say that we're not ready or that we're the little guy and we can't sit at the table of the big boys. The one thing we can't do is say that because other people will now set the expectations for us. And that's what's happening a lot with carbon credits and all of this. So we need to start on our own, and we need to make progress and take this seriously and wrap it into the way of doing business for us. It's not something aside or those standards that European companies, banks, and so on have forced upon us to comply with. But you can't talk if you don't do. Thank you.
I like that. You can't talk if you don't do. Any other questions? Okay, we have 2 questions here. So we'll take those 2 and then we'll wrap up. Oh, it even has my name on it.
Hello everyone, my name is Ivana Osagi and I actually run an ESG consulting firm. My question sort of touches on a couple of things that have been mentioned today. One of it is about the issue of proportionality, which we keep hearing about with the standards, but I think we need to have a look at how it works out in practice, because Adedayo kept talking about the big guy and the small guy, and I think looking at that in practice could be a huge selling point. I think that also would, I'd like to pull in the FRCN and Mark to answer that question. And the other side of it is perhaps thinking about a sort of corporate club, because people like Seplat, who are listed on NASDAQ and also the London Stock Exchange, in addition to the Nigerian Stock Exchange, have done a lot. So how can you share your learnings with Adedayo, who thinks he's a small player? You know, how can we have this exchange happening between the people who are pioneers with ESG and have done a lot because of the requirements of the other jurisdictions that they are affiliated with? That's my second question.
Thank you. So, Mark, can you take the first part of the question? I hope you were able to hear it. Sorry, Mark. Hold on. Another question online that is also for you, so I'll just put them both together. How are Nigerian indigenous companies like Seplat tracking Scope 3 emissions? And please, really short.
So I'll start from the second question. It's very hard. That's the short answer. It's very hard. Scope 1 and Scope 2, yes. Scope 3, it's hard. So it's something that, and if I use Seplat as an example, we're actively looking at, because, you know, Scope 3 is about the vendors, about the third parties, out of your control, right? So how do you now put in place measures and trackers and systems that help track what it is that they do? How do they honestly declare what it is that happens? So it's an ongoing process. It's something that we're still having conversations around and are trying to be guided by, and we hope to be able to pilot 1 or 2 things over the next 12 months, but it's hard. That's the honest truth. When it comes to the question you asked around interestingly, we don't see ourselves as the big guy when it comes to ESG. We don't. We see ourselves as also being on that journey, and somewhere actually at the beginning of that journey. I go back again to what our keynote speaker said around sustainability and the end state, and the fact that 2 years ago we did not have a sustainability team at Seplat. Right? But then again, 2-3 years ago, we looked at our corporate strategy for the next 5 years, and we said we need to start to think about this thing actively. And the first step is to actually put it into the corporate strategy. And so everything that we then build from that base is around sustainable business practices, it's around ESG, it's around looking at what we disclose, it's around looking at how we operate and how our business is built, and then you start to invest accordingly. So those learnings are available, and working with, and again, been regulated by the FRCN and all these other bodies. I think they, working with us, will be in a better position to sort of bring together these various best practices as we have it now, and these various leaders, you know, as we have them now, to come and talk about the reality of execution. So more than we doing it, I think it's about a collaboration, and it's something that I know if I use our regulator, the NEPRC, they are looking at very seriously.
Thank you very much. So we'll take the last question over there. Sorry.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bola Tinubu. I lead the corporate practice of DLA Piper Africa, Nigeria. I'm also a member of the advisory board of the University of Cambridge Institute of Sustainability and Leadership. And my question is for either Mark or Ngozi. Now, we know that ESG is a whole board issue, and in Nigeria, directors have legal and fiduciary duties that require them to oversee ESG risks and opportunities. Now, how do we, or what is your advice for Nigerian companies, particularly companies that are starting off on their journey? How do we make sure that the directors and the boards understand their responsibilities to provide that effective oversight of sustainability governance? And how do we actually ensure that they have the ability to carry out their job and they actually discharge their role? Thank you.
Ngozi, do you want to take that one?
Sure. You know, I think the first thing, and I think that the stock exchange and others have started off right by really encouraging boards to be trained in ESG, be trained in what it is that sustainability is. And it's a soft requirement, but I think it may soon become a hard requirement, right? 2, the fact that we actually have to do integrated reporting. Many people have started off with a sustainability report or an ESG report, but where we're going, as they've done in South Africa or in the UK, we do integrated reports. What we do in sustainability is not something which is completely separate from, oh, here's our annual report, and by the way, here's this thing. So those 2 things will drive people to actually engage because they now have to be compliant. But it cannot stop there. Because if you just do the tick box or the compliance, you will not have achieved the ultimate potential of what really looking at ESG and sustainability can do to your business to enhance performance, improve workforce development, improve your engagement within your community, improve your, and I say this, stakeholder return and not your shareholder return, and improve your corporate governance, which ultimately has an impact on all of these things. So unfortunately, it has to start by forcing people to comply. But where it needs to go is that we've got to get people and boards enlightened. And once they're enlightened about the business impact of ESG and sustainability, I think it then moves from there. Because at the end of the day, people are not in business to be philanthropists, really, right? They're trying to actually make returns. So we have to understand that doing good is good business. And when you get that point, I think you become, like I am, an impassioned person about ESG and the importance of it. And that's why I'm trying to do a lot more on ESG consulting and really sharing my experience over the last, I would say, more than 20-something years. Because when you work in industries like the pharmaceutical sector, or what I'm doing now, tobacco, alcohol, you begin to understand that you have to do these things as a license to operate. And it actually materially impacts your brand, your business, your reputation, and your performance. So that's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we're going to wrap up. I think it's been a very insightful discussion. I've definitely learned a lot from my panelists. I'm very excited to see, sort of where we're going with ESG as a country and also as a continent, and how we make it our own. I think that's really, been the message across, the entire panel, that we do need to, adapt the standards, but also adopt them and make them our own and find our own unique lens of how we, engage, and really focus on those social issues that are really prevalent. I also took away that we really need to focus on how do we partner, right? How does the regulator partner with the actual companies that are implementing? How the companies also share knowledge, right? So I think one thing that became really clear with the last question was that you think you're a small guy, and nobody feels that they are doing it the right way, and everybody's kind of unsure and like, okay, am I there yet or not? And I think, and this is to, entities like the society, as well as FRCN and IOD, right? You guys are all here. And I think, really thinking about when we publish our publications, can we create case studies of best practices that across different industries that people can then take and learn from, right? Can we also, create training sessions around sharing those best practices and actually bringing practitioners like Chioma and Adedayo in and to say, and Ngozi, and to say, how are you doing this in your industry? Share your experience, show us examples. I think, when you have an example, it becomes much easier to understand, and then you also get more motivated to actually go from, okay, this is a checkbox approach and I just need to, create, some level of compliance, to this is actually what is going to impact my business and future-proof my business and drive my business. So I'm hoping that we'll see a lot more, in that space. And I think one thing that also was highlighted was carrying the public sector along and making sure that we have similar frameworks for the public sector, as well as, training, stakeholder engagement, knowledge transfer, and knowledge sharing. So with that, I'm going to close. Again, my name is Nkem Dilimuwaje Bell, and it's been a pleasure moderating this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was a very great session. Can we give them a round of applause again? Just before you go, I think we should have a group picture. Mr. President, Ambassador, can you please join them? Then after this, we'll be presenting our token of appreciation to all the speakers and panelists this morning. Please, sir, join them. Here, Mr. President. Yes, sir. Mr. President, you can stay at the middle, sir. The middle. You can also join us. Okay. Please, can we have the plaques for the panelists? So, Mr. President, thank you. You'll be doing us the honor of presenting the plaques to only the panelists. Okay. Gently, sir. Well done. Thank you very much for that wonderful session. Mr. President, we need to... your plaques. Can we have the honor of presenting the plaques to the panelists? So we start from, in no particular order. Let's start from Chioma. Thank you very much. Ngozi, please. Thank you. Thank you. Adedayo. Then let's also have our guest speaker, Ambassador Shuab Ahmad. The one for Ambassador. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Then at this point, we will call on our sponsors. We want to also appreciate them openly here. I will start with the moderator. Sorry, Ken, please. You did a very good job. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now. So let's have the representative of Stanbic IBTC. Are they around? Any representative from SEC? Zenith Bank? A co-distribution company? Bank of Industry? Any representative? Zcrest. I think we should give that to Adedayo, the CEO. Or someone is there? Okay, you can come. Thank you. Good. Polaris Bank, do we have any representative? Okay, we have one here. Thank you for your support. So we have Polaris Bank here. Thank you very much. We appreciate. Any representative from JNCI? JNCI. Thank you very much. Transcorp Hotels. Transcorp Hotels. Canaan Partners. Any representative? Okay, someone is there. Thank you very much. We appreciate. Thank you. Please, can we appreciate all the sponsors of this conference? Thank you very much, Mr. President. At this point, I'm going to invite Nkechi Unwosi to come and anchor the presentation of the books. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues and honored guests, I'm deeply honored to stand before you today to mark the public presentation of this book. It's called Corporate Governance and Sustainability Reporting in Nigeria, of businesses, corporate non-financial reporting, particularly with leveraging the governance function in the implementation of ISSB standards. Part B assesses the corporate governance and sustainability reporting structure of the top 30 most capitalized companies on the Nigerian exchange, and concludes with observations and recommendations to improve corporate governance and sustainability reporting in these companies. Part C explores the female representation on the board of 30 companies and sectorial analysis of the companies. Finally, Part D concludes with a pictorial analysis of the 30 capitalized companies' compliance on sustainability reporting in consonance with the provision of the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance 2018 and the Nigerian Stock Exchange Sustainability Disclosure Guidelines 2020. Thank you. So here it is. Do try and buy it.
I think at this point we need to launch and open the book to the public. So where is it? Okay, there's another one. Oh, can we have that? Thank you.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege for me to be given the honor of unveiling another very informative publication of the Society of Corporate Governance Nigeria, and we'll unveil it shortly. But the title of this publication is ESG and Board Leadership, a Director's Handbook. I think the title says it all. It's a must-have book that each of us needs to not only leave the room with, but also make sure that each of our organizations has a minimum of 10 copies. And I'm not marketing. This book comes in 7 chapters, and it starts with clarifying the concept of ESG. It goes on to look at the regulatory landscape of ESG in Nigeria and globally. It proceeds from there to talk about the rationale for directors' engagement with ESG, the board oversight and sustainability, board engagement and sustainability reporting, and finally has a conclusion and recommendation. The foreword was written by our own chair of the Society of Corporate Governance in the person of Mr. M.K. Ahmed, OON, the president. The preface was done by Mr. Oluwaseun Modupe Ogungbe, who was a lead researcher. It has followed the 3 statutes from Climate Change Act 2021, Companies and Allied Matters Act of 2020, and the Petroleum Industry Act of 2023. It also takes into consideration all the various regulations that we have. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now proceed to the position where we will unveil this book. You haven't seen it yet, right? And I'll also ask that all our moderator, our guest speaker of today, and our distinguished panelists to please join Mr. President as we unveil this book. Thank you. Mr. President, these books. You need to bring it forward so he can be behind them. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you. Other members of the board, please. Past and present.
That's more like it.
Thank you. So we'll give Mr. President the honors. I think he's stepped back.
On behalf of the association and distinguished members on this side of the room, and members and fellows of the society, we are launching these 2 books, the preview of which had already been stated, and we hope and pray it will be for the good and sustainability of our corporate government practice and culture in Nigeria. Thank you, and may God bless us. Thank you.
Thank you. Can each of us take a book? 1 book each. One very big book. Okay, there we go. Can you hold some books? Whoa, whoa, whoa. So I'm told that the books are available on the stand outside if you'd like to purchase them. And they're priced, hold on, you'll do the marketing there.
No, and they're quite reasonable. They're just 15,000 naira, which you probably spend on lunch. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
addressed the theme today and shared their wealth of knowledge. Can we please give them a round of applause? I'm not sure that any of us will leave the room the way we came in. I must also, with a deep sense of appreciation, I thank our keynote speaker, Dr. Jackie Chimhanzi, and our guest speaker, Ambassador Shuaibu Adamu Ahmed, for your very inspiring words today. Thank you so much. A round of applause. In the words of Isaac Newton, if we were able to see the future, it was only because we stood on the shoulders of giants. So permit me today to also use this opportunity to thank our dear sponsors in the room and extend on behalf of the society our sincere appreciation. Polaris Bank, Zenith Bank, Stanbic, Bank of Industry, JNC International, Transcorp, Kenner Partners, Zeta Crest, and EKDC. Thank you very much. A big round of applause to all of you. To all our invitees, both in the room and online, who have joined us from different walks of life, thank you very much for your support and continued cooperation. We are indeed most honored to have you here today, and also for those of you online for listening and staying all the way to the end. Ladies and gentlemen, this event cannot be dimensioned and cannot happen overnight. It happened with a lot of planning, diligence, execution, and a keen eye by members of staff. So if I, on behalf of the board, would like to use this opportunity to sincerely thank the management. Can you please stand up for recognition for the hard work that has gone into doing this incredible 2023 Annual Corporate Governance Conference. Chioma and team, a big well done to all of you. I know that we have stretched you outside your comfort zones, but I think and I dare say it has paid off, so congratulations. So at this final point, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being a part of this 2023 conference. We couldn't have done it without each and every one of you. I wish you all a splendid rest of the day and a big happy cheer once more for Mark, Chioma, Ngozi, and Dedayo for the wealth of experience that you have really given us today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
There's also going to be photographs. If you are interested, we'll be having some photographs. Can we have that now very quickly?
It all started with an exchange of value. Barter, cowrie, nickel, leather, paper, gold, cards, more cards, less paper, more digital. This is how far I have come. This is how I've been made. The question is, how far are you willing to go with me? To grow with me, show me, and know me. This is an official invitation to enter into an era of a recurring creation of wealth. Not a one-off game, but many gains leading to infinity, transcending from one person to generations born and unborn, giving you that one desire, wealth. How, you might ask? Remember when you made your first 1,000, and then 10,000, and then hundreds of thousands, and then millions? It started with the smallest version of me. A time when no matter how little I showed up, and we made every move a victory, an asset yielding assets. I have evolved. I'm not looking to be kept in a bank. I want us to build together. We've done it before, and we can do it again. This time, as friends. Partners, what do you say? With me, we can be more.
level, but I really need some help to get ahead. I know just what to do, I'll vault it for my loans, overdraft, step by step to my dream business with Vault is the answer. Salary earners, entrepreneurs, get your loans with no collateral. Vault is the answer. Quick sign up, zero paperwork, step by step to your dream business with Vault.
Vault is available to individuals, SMEs, and corporate customers. Download Vault by Polaris Bank from the Google Play Store or Apple App Store to get started today.
I've been running my business on my own, trying my best to get it to the next level, but
There is nothing like one-man business. One creates an ecosystem of products and services. Another supports. One plants. Others harvest. One ships it, and another collects it. One seeks answers, the other prescribes solutions. One man produces, another consumes. There is nothing like a one-man business. Business is finding the right partner that goes all the way with you, with answers that lead to your business growth. Find your growth partner with Stanbic IBTC. Go for growth with Stanbic IBTC.
For over 6 decades, Bank of Industry has been here, driving Nigeria's industrial development through financial and business support services to micro enterprises, small and medium enterprises, and large enterprises across Nigeria. Leveraging on strategic partnerships, we provide equipment financing, working capital, and support to enterprises in key sectors of Nigeria's economy, including youth and women-led enterprises. Whatever your business needs, starting up, expansion, diversification, modernization, or rehabilitation, we'll be here always to support you. Bank of Industry, transforming Nigeria's industrial sector.
It all started with an exchange of value. Barter, cowrie, nickel, leather, paper, gold, cards, more cards, less paper, more digital. This is how far I have come. This is how I've been made. The question is, how far are you willing to go with me? To grow with me, show me, know me. This is an official invitation to enter into an era of a recurring creation of wealth. Not a one-off gain, but many gains leading to infinity, transcending from one person to generations born and unborn, giving you that one desire, wealth. How, you might ask? Remember when you made your first 1,000, and then 10,000, and then hundreds of thousands, and then millions? It started with the smallest version of me. A time when no matter how little I showed up, and we made every move a victory, an asset yielding assets. I have evolved. I'm not looking to be kept in a bank. I want us to build together. We've done it before, and we can do it again. This time as friends. Partners? What do you say? With me, we can be more.
running my business on my own. Trying my best to get it to the next level, but I really need some help to get ahead. I know just what to do, I'll vote it for my loans, overdraft, step by step to my dream business, we vote. Salary earners, entrepreneurs, get your loans with no collateral. Quick sign up, zero paperwork, step by step to your dream business, we vote.
Vault is available to individuals, SMEs, and corporate customers. Download Vault by Polaris Bank from the Google Play Store or Apple App Store to get started today.
The Governance Platform is an online community of professionals, institutions, members of the academia, and all who are interested in regularly elevating the quality of discourse around governance issues and deepening the conversation on governance in emerging markets. Driven by passion to enhance corporate sustainability, the Governance Platform is designed to promote a forum for professionals to connect, discuss, express different views, and work together to address critical governance issues. The Governance Platform invites governance professionals and enthusiasts to submit original and innovative research papers on the latest developments in corporate governance to the email address editorialboard@governanceplatform.org. For more information, please visit the website on www.thegovernanceplatform.org.
There is nothing like one-man business. One creates an ecosystem of products and services. Another supports. One plants. Others harvest. One ships it, and another collects it. One seeks answers. The other prescribes solutions. One man produces, another consumes. There is nothing like a one-man business. Business is finding the right partner that goes all the way with you, with answers that lead to your business growth. Find your growth partner with Stanbic IBTC. Go for growth with Stanbic IBTC.
For over 6 decades, Bank of Industry has been here, driving Nigeria's industrial development through financial and business support services to micro enterprises, small and medium enterprises, and large enterprises across Nigeria. Leveraging on strategic partnerships, we provide equipment financing, working capital, and support to enterprises in key sectors of Nigeria's economy, including youth and women-led enterprises. Whatever your business needs, starting up, expansion, diversification, modernization, or rehabilitation, we'll be here, always to support you. Bank of Industry, transforming Nigeria's industrial sector.
It all started with an exchange of value. Barter, cowrie, nickel, leather, paper, gold, cards, more cards, less paper, more digital. This is how far I have come. This is how I've been made. The question is, how far are you willing to go with me? to grow with me, show me, and know me. This is an official invitation to enter into an era of a recurring creation of wealth. Not a one-off gain, but many gains leading to infinity, transcending from one person to generations born and unborn, giving you that one desire, wealth. How, you might ask? Remember when you made your first 1,000, and then 10,000, and then hundreds of thousands, and then millions? It started with the smallest version of me. A time when no matter how little I showed up, and we made every move a victory, an asset yielding assets. I have evolved. I'm not looking to be kept in a bank. I want us to build together. We've done it before, and we can do it again. This time as friends. Partners? What do you say? With me, we can be more.
I've been running my business on my own, trying my best to get it to the next level, but I really need some help to get ahead. I know just what to do, I'll vault it for my loans, overdraft, step by step to my dream business with Vault. Vault is the answer. Salary earners, entrepreneurs, get your loans with no collateral. Yeah. Vault is the answer. Quick sign up, zero paperwork, step by step to your dream business with Vault. By Polaris Bank.
Vault is available to individuals, SMEs, and corporate customers. Download Vault by Polaris Bank from the Google Play Store or Apple App Store to get started today.
Vault is the answer.
The Governance Platform is an online community of professionals, institutions, members of the academia, and all who are interested in regularly elevating the quality of discourse around governance issues and deepening the conversation on governance in emerging markets. Driven by passion to enhance corporate sustainability, the Governance Platform is designed to promote a forum for professionals to connect, discuss, express different views, and work together to address critical governance issues. The Governance Platform invites governance professionals and enthusiasts to submit original and innovative research papers on the latest developments in corporate governance to the email address editorialboard@governanceplatform.org. For more information, please visit the website on www.thegovernanceplatform.org.
There is nothing like one-man business. One creates an ecosystem of products and services. Another supports. One plants. Others harvest. One ships it, and another collects it. One seeks answers, the other prescribes solutions. One man produces, another consumes. There is nothing like a one-man business. Business is finding the right partner that goes all the way with you, with answers that lead to your business growth. Find your growth partner with Stanbic IBTC. Go for growth with Stanbic IBTC.
For over 6 decades, Bank of Industry has been here, driving Nigeria's industrial development through financial and business support services to micro enterprises, small and medium enterprises, and large enterprises across Nigeria. Leveraging on strategic partnerships, we provide equipment financing, working capital, and support to enterprises in key sectors of Nigeria's economy, including youth and women-led enterprises. Whatever your business needs, starting up, expansion, diversification, modernization, or rehabilitation, we'll be here always to support you. Bank of Industry, transforming Nigeria's industrial sector.